When you picture New Zealand's South Island, like actually picture it, what do you see? Probably Milford Sound, maybe the bungee bridge in Queenstown, maybe a hobbit hole, probably not a gravel road running dead straight through a mountain valley, both shoulders drowning in purple. Not a lake so blue it looks fake, framed on every side by flowers that shouldn't technically be there at all. Because here's the thing, almost nobody plans a trip around. For about 6 weeks a year, parts of the South Island turn into something that looks like it was painted, not photographed, and the flower responsible for it is, technically, a problem. Let's talk about this popular tourism draw and the complicated reality it presents, the ecology of New Zealand. The flower is the Russell lupin, tall, cone-shaped spires in purple, pink, blue, and white, some of them well over a meter high. They were introduced to New Zealand from North America last century, and somewhere along the way, one woman, Connie Scott, who lived near Lake Tekapo, started scattering lupin seeds along the roadsides of the Mackenzie Basin, just because she liked how they looked. Decades later, they've spread across the region so thoroughly that they become one of the most photographed sites in the country. There's also a real ecological debate underneath the beauty, because lupins aren't native and because they compete with the braided river habitats that endangered native birds depend on. Conservation groups actively work to control their spread in some areas, even while tourists drive for hours to see them. You're not just looking at a pretty flower. You're looking at an argument New Zealand is still having with itself. The window to actually see this is narrow, and that's part of what makes it worth planning around. Bloom typically runs from late November through mid-December, though it shifts year to year depending on spring weather. A cold, wet spring pushes it later. An early warm one can bring it forward and shorten the season. Some fields also get mowed for silage right as they're peaking, since this is still working farmland, not a garden built for tourists. If you're the kind of traveler who books around a specific window rather than just sometime in summer, this is one where checking recent year bloom reports a few weeks out genuinely changes whether your trip lands right. Geographically, this is Mackenzie country, the high, dry basin in the central South Island, roughly 3 to 4 hours drive from Christchurch, and the road that connects most of it, State Highway 8, is where you'll see the densest, longest stretches of roadside lupins anywhere in the country. The single most photographed spot is Lake Tekapo itself, turquoise, glacial-fed water against the Southern Alps, with the small stone church of the Good Shepherd sitting right on the lakefront. In lupin season, the paddocks around town and the lakeshore path fill in with color on top of that view, and it's the kind of frame that genuinely looks different from anything else on this island. From Tekapo, the drive south along SH8 toward Twizel is where the flowers stop being a backdrop and start being the main event. Long, unbroken walls of purple running the roadside for kilometres at a time, with Araki Mount Cook visible in the distance on a clear day. One practical thing worth knowing before you go. Almost all of this land is private farmland. The lupins along the road shoulder and public reserve areas are fair game to walk into and photograph, but stepping into paddocks beyond the fence line is trespassing, and it's become enough of an issue in recent years that some landowners have gotten genuinely frustrated with tourists cutting through crops for a photo. Stay on the verge, use a longer lens if you want that standing in the field compression look, and you'll get the same shot without the conflict. Lake Pukaki, a little further along, does something slightly different. The lake itself is a more intense, almost unreal turquoise, fed directly by glacial meltwater off Mount Cook, and the lupins here tend to cluster right along the lakeside road rather than spreading into open farmland. It's a shorter stop than Tekapo, but it's arguably the single best mountain plus lake plus flowers composition on the whole route, and it's easy to fold into the same day if you're driving through rather than staying overnight. If you want fewer people in frame, push on to Omarama and the roads around Twizel. This is where a lot of the road trip traffic starts to thin out, but the lupin density along the verges doesn't drop nearly as much. You're trading a bit of drive time for noticeably quieter roadsides, which matters if you're shooting rather than just looking. Early morning is the move here, regardless of which stretch you're on, not just for the light, which is genuinely better, softer, and less blown out than midday, but because the road shoulders get busy with other travelers doing exactly what you're doing once the sun's fully up. For most people building a South Island itinerary, the Mackenzie Basin isn't the whole trip. It's usually a leg on the way south toward Queenstown, and that's honestly the smarter way to frame it if you're planning around lupin season specifically, because it means the flowers become one incredible stop inside a bigger loop rather than the entire trip's reason to exist. From Tekapo or Twizel, it's a few hours further south into Queenstown, and from there, Milford Sound and the wider Fjordland region open up, a completely different kind of dramatic, all fjords and waterfalls, instead of open basin and wildflowers, which makes for a genuinely strong contrast if you sequence the two back to back. There are some links in the description to a few experiences around the South Island that'll help you make the most of your time down there and catch some genuinely unforgettable sights along the way. Worth a look if you're building this into a longer loop. What makes this whole stretch of the country work as a destination isn't really any single photo. It's the fact that for 6 weeks a year, a working agricultural landscape, sheep paddocks, gravel roads, farm fences, turns into something that looks completely staged entirely by accident because of a flower that technically isn't supposed to be as widespread as it is. Most people flying into Queenstown or Christchurch during those weeks will drive straight past it without knowing what they're looking at. You won't. That's the Mackenzie Basin's lupin season, genuinely one of the most visually strange, slightly contested, and short-lived travel windows the South Island has to offer, and one almost nobody plans a trip around on purpose. So what do you think? Would you base your South Island itinerary around coming to see the lupins? Do you think this is an Instagram-worthy bucket list item or an ecological threat that needs to be eliminated? Let us know. Please also let us know if you would like more underrated tourism gems or suggest some topics you'd like to see us cover. As always, please like and subscribe and pass on to your travel buddies. We have so much content coming for so many different locations, the inspiration for your next big vacation may be just around the corner. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next video.